in a world where Lightning is the solution, let's say, for day-to-day payments and for remittances around the world, and a lot of these intermediaries are disrupted, and a lot of fees get passed on to customers and to people all over the world. What do you think? Do you think there are any interesting second order effects that will come from that? From passing fees on to
Yes.
people? Like, what does that lead to? What are the things that people are not thinking about when someone in any country in the world can get a payment instantly and for free from any other country in the world?
The narrative that I see here, and it's a really challenging one. I'm not obviously not the only one, and I'm fascinated by people who have observed and talked about the phenomenon, which is basically separation of money and state, and that can't. It's not trivial. If you look at the Reformation, it was a bloody mess for several hundred years. We need to kind of that's the last time a function was wrestled from the state, i.e., religion was separated from the state. So the timeline I'm looking at is basically one where individual sovereignty is increasing slowly and in fits and bursts. And I think we've reached a point where if we separate money from state, where it's the most maximum sovereignty we've ever achieved for the individual. Now, it's not going to be easy, and I think some states might kind of blindly walk into it without realizing what they're doing. But to be honest, most of the nation states do communicate with each other quite well. So I think, yeah, the separation of money from the state isn't going to be easy, and the second order effects are going to be colossal. And they're going to be as big as the Reformation. If not bigger, because there's more people alive today and there's more technology available to do more. So now I just hope it can be carried out peacefully. To be honest, that's my main concern is how, because I don't see it not happening. I just cannot see the juggernaut being stopped at this stage. You can't stop Bitcoin. It's demonstrably.
Right.
Maybe even if you make a quantum computer, I don't think you're going to stop it because we can change the algorithm in Bitcoin users for consensus to overcome a quantum computer. That can be done. So if it can't be stopped, how are you going to deal with it? And I hope that it will be a case of the state slowly losing sovereignty to the individual. Because right now, I also think states have way more power than they've ever had historically. So it's not a bad thing that we give individuals more sovereignty whatsoever. How that plays out, though, I have no idea. I just hope it's as peaceful as possible.
Right. Do you think there's a way for states to make this transition to giving power back to people without first going through the issues of hyperinflation or some crisis? Like, do you think there's a peaceful handoff possible? Is there a precedent for that? Or is it just going to be like one country or a few countries get way into a hyperinflationary environment, people push back and kind of, take their own course?
That's a fascinating question. Is there precedent for it? I'm not aware, if I'm honest with you. I mean, the nearest we have is El Salvador today. That's the nearest. And we haven't reached the point where inflation has really caused. The cat isn't 100% out of the bag. I mean, people are suffering, but it hasn't exploded yet. We're not in the Weimar Republic or in Zimbabwe yet. And as long as that situation can be avoided, then you can argue that the pressure for the final change is not there, although the juggernaut continues to keep moving forward. So I think we've got to watch what happens in El Salvador, and I'm sure in other countries, because it's only a matter of time that I think other countries will, alongside their own shitcoins, accept Bitcoin. And maybe the peaceful way, the only peaceful kind of resolution here is that you never get away from the fiat currency. And I had this debate with people online. I don't think the US dollar is ever going away. I don't think the Iranian rial will ever go away. As long as there's a nation state with a border, then it will demand taxes be paid in its local currency. I think what will happen, though, maybe the balance situation is that most people will use that to pay whatever they owe the state, but for everything else they'll use Bitcoin. And I can see that, and effectively Bitcoin being a bridge asset as well, the money of the world. I can see that situation. I think that's within the realms of possibility. And the weakening, while the state doesn't lose its fiat currency, it will be so weak. One situation is it will be so weak that no one really uses it for anything other than paying taxes, and they're happy to do so because they're paying less taxes year on year as it gets inflated away. Or actually, the local currency will strengthen and we get better governance. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath for that one, but maybe lawmakers will be actually elected into power because they understand that they have to keep money, but they have to have tight fiscal policy. Otherwise, Bitcoin will kick them out. That could have
Right. Yeah, it's just like a check on sanity, making sure that there's not insane money printing going on, and keeping the economy in check in a sense.
Yeah, and if they do insanely print money, then your liabilities to the state go down anyway. You don't care because you hold Bitcoin.
Right. But now, if you're the state, don't you think that over time, if Bitcoin, this juggernaut, continues to roll on and it grows to a 10 trillion, $100 trillion asset, isn't there a certain point at which the state decides we would actually rather have taxes paid in Bitcoin rather than the local currency?
Yeah.
Like, what would then the benefit be of being the state of receiving taxes in the local currency?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. What would the benefit be? Maybe it does go to zero eventually. Maybe they do get destroyed. And I think Michael Saylor said this, like we start with like the maybe 5 currencies remaining. The Iranian rial disappears, whatever other shitcoin currency people have disappears, and then you're left with the US dollar because everyone wants that already. But you've got to ask the question, why do people want the US dollar? Is to pay for it's the petrodollar. So that's why people really, I mean, it's a bit more than that. International trade is conducted in USD, but that's reducing now as well. So I could even foresee a point where no one would want to hold the US dollar anymore. So yeah, maybe that is the final step. It's just, I guess if the progression is slow, it could be peaceful. If it happens quickly, I can't see it being peaceful.